It is an undeniable fact that without steel, we wouldn't be where we are today. Henry Bessemer, as you can see on the screen, is the inventor of the Bessemer process and an influential person in the field of material sciences for delivering us high-quality steel. Hi, my name is Max Wolff, sophomore in material sciences and engineering at Texas A&M University, and without steel, you wouldn't be living where you are today. Today, I'll be talking to you about Henry's earlier inventions that prepared him for later, how he wasn't initially successful with the steelmaking process, but once it took off, how the steel process revolutionized the world. Now, Henry Bessemer's early interactions with metallurgy prepared him for later through metalworking experience and money. He got his start in bronze powder making, and although this bronze powder wasn't used for metallurgy, it was highly requested by the Victorian elites. Joe Kappas, in his metal powder report, states that he was determined to keep his production method a secret, and instead of applying for patent protection, he went to extreme measures to maintain security at his plants. While the bronze powder was usually handcrafted, Bessemer's production allowed for mass production of cheap gold painting in objects, which, if you were a Victorian and you wanted to look rich, was a very nice thing to have. The money and experience earned in the bronze process later supported his innovations. While the bronze powder wasn't used for metallurgy, it was a great introduction to the field which steel was in, and he had made a large sum of money from selling off the powder, which he later used to fund his steelmaking process. Now, I've talked a bit about his steelmaking process and how it was the greatest thing ever, but was it initially successful? No. As you can see, the process is fairly complicated, and the main problem wasn't even at the very end or in the middle, it was at the start with the process and materials that he used. His pig iron had a lower content of phosphorus than any other sourcing option, and phosphorus caused the steel to be brittle and unusable for construction purposes. And although this would later be solved, at the time there was no short-term solution. Lauren Halapa, in her historical overview journal, states that thereafter a wide interest awakened and several plants in Britain started to make trials. However, they led to disaster as the products were brittle and useless. So you'd think Bessemer would, maybe clarify some sourcing options, say, check the phosphorus content in your iron. He did not that. As a response, he disregarded those he had licensed the patent to and started up his own steel company, undercutting the competitors. 4 years after the patenting process, Henry Bessemer and Company was created. He was able to sustain the company using the bronze earnings from earlier. And since he had a monopoly on the market, it was able to be made very cheap, very high quality. Now, the Bessemer process and its products have changed the world. Bessemer's intention to create cheap, high-quality steel was easily fulfilled by this. Using the company's influence, he was able to keep it cheap, and the people he supplied didn't have a problem with the steel that he produced. Now, the process itself was also fairly cheap. Using pig iron as the base and oxygen to burn off the impurities, it was proven to also be very cheap and effective. Pig iron was already widely available at the time, and oxygen was in the air around us, so fairly cheap. Even without using just pig iron and oxygen, alloying materials was also fairly common at the time, and through developments was also made fairly cheap. Now, since steel was a great replacement for iron, it's been used in many replacements for it. Brian Spear, in his World Patent Information, states that once developed, the cheap, high-quality steel found a multitude of uses, for example, shipbuilding, construction, engineering, steel rails, and etc. And as I said at the start of the speech, it's responsible for the house that you live in. So there's no doubt that steel has become very, very widespread in use. In conclusion, Henry Bessemer is an influential person in the field of material sciences. I talked to you today about his earlier inventions, his initial struggles with the Bessemer process, and the success that it eventually brought along. Look around you. You wouldn't be in your house or on the 7th floor of Rudder Tower without Bessemer's help. Thank you for listening to me today. And here are my note cards.